What up? What up? What up? This Ibn Webb, Ib Webb, Karana Sum here. Official thing situation I have going on here. Essex County All Day edition I'm doing here. Uh, the blessings they continue to come my way when doing this and get an opportunity to meet individuals that I've heard of or what have you. And this is one of them, John Callaway. Want to say what's up to Coach Bob Lester for suggesting, Mr. Callaway here as well too. So I want to make sure I put that out there. Oh, with that said, though, I had an opportunity to talk to Mr. Callaway prior to this, as far as some phone conversations and everything. Just overall great guy here, but I'm just looking forward to just letting you guys hit how much of a great guy he is, great person he is, and a little bit of his walk. So we're gonna get to it. Hold tight.
Hey, brother.
Hey, how you doing there?
I'm well. I'm well. Yourself?
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for doing this again. I know I've said that a couple of times, but thank you for doing this.
Oh, man. The pleasure is mine, and thank you for considering me to be included.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I wanted to ask, as far as I know you're in Miami these days, how'd you end up in Miami?
Well, I've been coming to Miami because I have several friends who moved here in the mid 80s. I was living in Hartford at the time. And they moved here for weather, job opportunities, quality of life. And I began visiting, freeloading, with as a result of them being posted up, and fell in love with the place. And it was a very different place in the mid 80s. It hadn't gotten roaring yet, but it was still great weather, great food, great beaches, and good people. And so I visited for a number of years while I worked in Hartford, then DC, and early 2000s, I unfortunately had a motorcycle accident, a pretty serious one. And I'm lucky to survive it. I'm lucky to have all my body parts. But what it ultimately allowed for me to do was retire.
Okay.
And fortunately, the real estate gods had been good to me throughout my adult life. And I had a couple of pieces of property in Washington, D.C., and they had increased in value substantially while I was there. And unfortunately for the real estate owners in Miami at that time, the real estate market had turned on its head. Particularly the condo market, people were getting destroyed. So one of my buddies is in the real estate game, one of the guys who moved down here from Hartford, and he's very, very good at what he does. Anyway, I was just starting to kick the tires a little bit. I was like, man, I can afford to retire. Help me understand what the real estate market is really like in Miami. Okay. And with his help, I did a little research, and I bought a 1,000 square foot condominium, basically right downtown on the Miami River, for what would be considered a down payment in other parts of the country. And so I messed around and paid cash.
Okay.
And posted and said, well, I am retired now.
Yeah.
I am semi-retired because I've worked like part-time jobs.
Okay.
Home Depot, Starbucks. I've done some volunteer work, but I haven't had a corporate job since 2010.
Okay.
So yeah, so that unfortunate experience sort of was the segue from DC into Miami. And because my dad had taught me very early on basic financial management skills. Basic, but they're critically important, as you probably well know. And as a result, I had saved money all my life. And then, like I said, the real estate gods took care of the rest. And I was in position to do things at a relatively young age that a lot of people never get to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have become a real proponent of particularly our people getting educated about fundamental financial literacy. I mean, what is a checking account? What is a credit card really?
Yes.
Why should you save half the money you get on your birthday? What are income taxes? What is Social Security? Why shouldn't you buy? An old timer once told me, buy half the car you can afford and twice the house. We do it just the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
We buy the big car and then we can't afford a house. Mm-hmm. So those kind of basic, like I said, some of those basic lessons, those of us who are fortunate, we stumble on them, we find them from some wise person or whatever, and it makes our lives very, very different. And I'm one of those fortunate ones who got, like I said, very basic fundamental financial education as a shorty, and I've practiced those principles since I was getting a quarter for my first allowance. I'll never forget it. I got a quarter a week from my dad, and he made me split that up between church, Cub Scouts, saving, and spending.
Okay.
So those principles, if you get them, they stick with you, and they definitely benefit you over your lifetime. And so a lot of what I've been able to do, at least financially, has to do with very simple, basic principles that I was introduced to very, very young. And fortunately, I haven't deviated.
It makes sense all in the world, too. Talk about the simplicity, and sometimes we make things more difficult than what they should be.
Absolutely. And I've read a couple of articles recently where big city school systems are starting to introduce financial literacy to their academic curriculum. I mean, I think people are starting to wake up, particularly in urban areas, to how important this is. And they're starting to add that to the curriculum for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And it's critically important. And I hope that really catches fire, because if I can do it, trust me, anybody.
Yes. Yeah, no, makes all the sense in the world, especially the younger all this stuff is taught, and things that, a lot of us weren't taught at an early age here. We take it, we grasp it, and it's in us, and it's part of our foundation. And, for these younger folks to take that and navigate through this world here, because again, it's simple. It's just a simplicity, and
some things are very, very simple.
And having a discipline behind it as well, too.
Yeah. And there's the segue into athletics.
Yes.
If you have the discipline to dedicate yourself to being a serious athlete at whatever level, amateur, collegiate, high school, professional, if you really have that kind of discipline, you have the discipline necessary to be great in life.
Yes. Absolutely. And I know you're down in Miami here, but I'm gonna take you up 95 or whatever way you get back up north here.
Very good.
By plane, by vehicle, what have you. Where all this start for you, Mr. Callaway? As far as were you born in New Jersey, or were you born elsewhere?
I was born in East Orange, but I want to share with you a little bit about my family. I know that's one of the reasons why Coach Lester pointed you in my direction. I'm proud and humbled to say that the Callaway side of my family came to New Jersey, New York in the late 1800s. We have, like I mentioned to you the other day, we did a Zoom family reunion a year ago, and one of my cousins, Gene Armstead, who played at Rutgers, he's the family historian, and he really has done a lot of official scholarly research on who our family is and who were those individuals who came here from Virginia. But the fact of the matter is that the first Callaways came to East Orange, and a branch went into New York, late 1800s. And the ones who posted up in East Orange obviously are my branch. And they became blue collar workers for the most part. In fact, I'm John L. Callaway III. Obviously, my father is John L. Callaway Jr. His father, John L. Callaway Sr., is one of the first African Americans to graduate from East Orange High School. To include, I have a picture, one of the pictures or pieces of art on my wall that I am most proud of is he played football for East Orange High School in 1905. And I have his picture of him sitting on the steps of East Orange High School. And I know it's 1905 because the guy in the middle of the picture is holding a football that says 05. I have in fact inherited his football helmet, which is, you got to be serious if you're going to play football in this leather piece, in this piece of leather.
Yes, yes.
So anyway, but you know, that group of people, they were a close-knit group, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers and sisters. At the same time, one of my father's older sister graduated from Uppsala College. My father, though he wasn't a flyer, he was a Tuskegee Airman. He served in the Army Air Corps during World War II, and he was an administrative guy / mechanic / amateur photographer. And I have several absolutely stunning photographs that he took himself of life at Tuskegee during his military experience. And I think I was telling you that when I was a kid, they were all in photo albums. Yes. And I knew that he was at a place called Tuskegee, and that he was in the Army or something like the Army. But like I was telling you when we talked maybe the first time, the Tuskegee Airmen were not quote unquote famous yet. Then in the 70s, they started to get shine, and I got to learn how spectacular and special and how amazing their experience was. And I just went back to the coffee table and I said, "Daddy, that's you?" He was like, "Yeah." Like, matter of fact, yeah, that's what we did. It was, to him, it was, we did what we were capable of. They were tripping because they didn't think we were capable of it. We never had those doubts. They did. We were like, of course we can fly and maintain airplanes. Teach us how to do it. We'll do it. We'll do it well.
That's right.
And that was sort of his reaction to, discovering that he and his crew at Tuskegee were important. He knew they were important all along. But anyway, so like I said, the Callaways go back to prior to 1900, and I have any number of very distinguished family members who have done fascinating things. For instance, one of my uncles, ironically, went to high school, Montclair High School, with Buzz Aldrin. And they were personal friends at Montclair High School. Fast forward to their professional careers, obviously Buzz Aldrin becomes an astronaut, right?
Yes.
Well, my uncle goes to work at Bendix Corporation, which was a high-tech company in the 60s that made high-tech stuff. He actually worked on he helped put the gyroscope together. Wow. That took Buzz Aldrin to the moon. So I jump up a high ladder. I really am fortunate that from humble beginnings, the folks in my family distinguished themselves, whether or not they were carpenters or working at the telephone company. family was always the premier deal. Making sure the kids got a good education and acted like they had some common sense.
Mm-hmm.
That was the primary thing. I don't remember anybody either in my nuclear family or extended family ever going on vacation. They went to the backyard during the summer, fired up the grill, and sat around and talked. And it was their brothers and sisters and cousins and their kids. We used to climb trees, eat mud pies. I mean, it was it was family.
Uh-huh.
In fact, I'm proud to say that I was a young professional, probably 25 or so, and I had discovered Martha's Vineyard because of some cool people that I got to know as I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
I actually sent my parents to Martha's Vineyard for their first official vacation when I was about 25, 26.
Yeah.
And my father didn't know what to do himself because he didn't have anything to do. There was no lawn to cut. There was no, oh, by the way, he happened to be the quintessential do-it-yourself.
Okay.
He used to make my toys. I mean, now I'm not kidding. I said, at one point I said, Daddy, can I have a go-kart? He was like, nah, you ain't getting no cart with no motor. He went down in the basement and he made me a go-kart out of wood that was space age. I had a train set that was the envy of the neighborhood. And he put it on a table that folded up into the wall.
Yeah.
When I got into Cub Scouts, first he made a crystal radio for me. Then when I got into Boy Scouts, he made a shortwave radio for me. And I was listening to Germany and Switzerland and when I'm 10 and 11 years old, but that's who my dad was. Unfortunately, I haven't inherited all of his talent in that regard. I can screw a light bulb in and do the basics, but his reputation in the family was take it to Uncle John, he'll fix it. And I'm not kidding.
No, it sound like it. Like it. No, that's amazing in a sense as far as the whole do-it-yourself. But as a kid, are you connecting the dots or these dots get connected kind of later on as an adult? Like, wow, like your background and your family, just how your father and your parents were. Do you make the connection a little later, like as far as just
Great question, Ibn. And the answer is later on.
Okay.
Because understandably, I thought everybody's father was like my father.
Okay.
I did. And so, again, segue into athletics. When I got into sports pretty seriously, let's say junior high school and high school, I started to play with guys, particularly during the summer. One of my best friends, his father was a gynecologist, and he's obviously pretty affluent. And he and his family introduced me to Martha's Vineyard, and so I got to see, how that other half lives.
Okay.
And then I played ball with cats in the projects in Orange. And I can remember very specifically, one day, one of my buddies who I played with in Orange came to my house, and my mom was famous for peanut butter cookies, Chef Boyardee pizza out the can, Kool-Aid, and that was sort of, so we had that for lunch. So a month or so later, we're at his house for lunch. We had sugar and butter sandwiches and water. And I'm like, it's starting to dawn on me. Not everybody has it quite, everybody comes from a slight, sometimes a very dramatically different background.
Yes.
So to answer your question more directly, 28, 29, I'm in Hartford. I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 years into my career. And my dad was from the generation, there wasn't a whole lot of I love you. I don't know that we ever said those words to one another. I know he showed me and I showed him, but it just wasn't how his generation communicated. But I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let our lives or his life end without knowing specifically that I love him and why.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote him a 4-page letter saying a lot of what I'm telling you. Like, Daddy, I thought everybody had a father like you. And I went through paragraph by paragraph, go-kart, crystal radio. I made it clear that he knew that I recognized and appreciated those things. And I sent it to him. And he never said a word about it. We never talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
30 years later, unfortunately, he joins the ancestors, right?
Yes.
And my mom's still alive, and she goes through his belongings. Don't you know he kept that letter his entire life? Mm. And my mother sent it back to me in the original envelope. Mm. Yeah, so to answer your question, yes, it was as I was growing up that I started to appreciate in a very real way how fortunate I was, and my brother, and my cousins, because I have my cousins have a very similar story to tell. But like I said, I made a conscious decision that I was going to tell him in one way or another that I had grown up enough, I had matured enough to realize that I was the exception to the rule. Mm-hmm. He was the exception to the rule. And unfortunately, as you probably are well aware, I came along in this, I came of age in the 70s and the 80s I think the epidemic of fatherless households really blew up. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, most of the kids that I grew up with, with rare exception, there was a mother and father in the household. But it was in the 70s and the 80s when that started to change very dramatically. And like I said, I wanted him to know that I recognized it, and that all those vacations he didn't go on. Mm-hmm. I know that he poured that energy and those financial resources into helping my brother and I become the people that we are.
Interesting you say that. And in regards even to fathers here, obviously stats show, like, with fathers' involvement, kids or children, they do so much better as far as their involvement. So, so to have 2-parent household, or even just a father actively involved in somebody's life, their stats show that they do a whole lot better, Absolutely. As far as life. Definitely. This whole sports thing, you talked about a little bit as far as junior high, what have you. When did you start taking a liking to athletics?
Again, it goes back to my dad. My buddy Dennis Banks, who you should have on your show, 1 year younger than me. He and I were literally in our backyard. We had nailed a plastic milk carton to a telephone pole. Mm-hmm. And we were throwing the ball in the basket. Mm-hmm. And my dad worked at Ford Motor Company in Mawa for 37 and a half years. By the way, never late, never missed a day due to illness, and came home about 2:30 every day. Mm-hmm. So I happened to notice him pull into the driveway, and he glanced and he saw Dennis and I, and throwing the ball into this basket. Don't you know? This is a great story. That weekend, my dad said, Bust. My nickname was Buster Brown, shortened to Bust. Okay. He said, Bust. Like I said, he was a do-it-yourselfer and the most efficient human being I've ever met. He said, Bust, go downstairs and get me the 3/4-inch box wrench, yada, yada. Now, he didn't say bring up all the box wrenches. He wanted the 3/4-inch box wrench. Details. He knew exactly, he could look at a nut and see which one it was. So he said, go downstairs and give me the 3/4-inch cover. So of course I go downstairs, and on his workbench, don't you know there's a backboard, a rim, and what will end up being the post that he put in cement in the backyard. No more plastic basket in the telephone pole. So I was probably 6th grade. Okay. And man, I wasn't passionate about basketball, throwing a ball in the in the crate. But once I had my own hoop,
Yeah.
man, you couldn't
Change the game. Change the game.
What? Man, I was, and then it was a neighborhood thing, and all my little buddies would come. And so it was sixth grade, sort of, when that fire got ignited. And Ashland School, the grammar school I went to, had a seventh grade team and an eighth grade team. So I played for Mr. Miltier, who was a family friend and a great athlete and teacher in the seventh grade, which only further ignited my passion for basketball. And then in the eighth grade, I played for Lou D'Antonio, who's a legendary teacher in East Orange public school system, great jazz aficionado, real quiet, real cool. And we actually won the city championship in the eighth grade, and we beat Mr. King and VLD. And VLD was the perennial winner of the eighth grade tournament annually, and we happened to upset them. And so I was at that point, man. I was one. In fact, so I get to Clifford Scott, and at that point I was good enough to play JV as a freshman.
Okay.
Sophomore year, Mr. King, who had been the coach at VLD for a million years, and some of the Kim Fisher, Mike Dabney, some of the cats you've already had on, they've mentioned him when you've talked to them. Mm-hmm. He was their junior high school coach. He came to Scott in my sophomore year, and I played varsity basketball from my sophomore year on through under Mr. King. So at that, I mean, that was, you know, it was cars, books, sort of, basketball, and that was sort of what my focus was. And in fact, I can remember when I was a sophomore in high school, Kareem was leaving UCLA, and I just knew I was going to grow to be 7'2". I knew it was going to happen. Mm-hmm. I wrote to Coach Wooden. I said, "Your next guy is right here. Mm-hmm. I'm ready, Coach. Put me in." I literally wrote to Coach Wooden. Obviously, I didn't grow to 7'2", and that never happened. But one of the assistants for Jim Valvano at Bucknell. So he came, classic case of, he came to see another guy play, and he saw me in my sophomore year. And he wrote me a handwritten letter. And he said, I saw you. I think you're gonna make something, you're gonna be something someday. Keep up the hard work. That was my first letter from any college coach expressing any degree of interest at all. And ultimately, over time, I got hundreds of letters because I was both a good student and a decent basketball player. But ultimately, I decided to go to Bucknell. One, because they showed interest first, and then Jim Valvano was the coach. Mm. And I don't know if you know anything about him, but he's the most other than my high school basketball coach, he's the most charismatic human being I know. And when the two of them got together, they were like, "Big John, you going to Bucknell. You stop all this nonsense. You're going to Bucknell." Mm-hmm. And so that's what happened.
Interesting. Before you get to Bucknell, what have you, but just playing at Scott, just how was that experience? I mean, again, obviously competition in the area and guys that you might not have played against, but you still played in the parks, what have you. Like, just how was that experience?
Well, you know, it was fabulous in large part because Mr. King changed the dynamic. Okay. Prior to Mr. King getting there, no, Scott did not play East Orange, Barringer, Central, West Side. We played schools, Division I, or whatever it's called in New Jersey, the small suburban schools, almost exclusively. Mm-hmm. But Mr. King was like, "No, we're not having that. We're playing the best of the best." And most of the coaches at Orange, Central, Vailsburg, Barringer, they were his boys.
Okay.
He went to Central. And so he knew them from high school. Cleo Hill is one of his best friends. Cleo Hill Sr.
Yes.
Is one of his best friends. So his roots are north. So Mr. King, almost overnight, we went from playing we kept playing the Roselles and the Glen Ridges and stuff, but he added East Orange, North, Barringer, Central, West Side. And that's, I think I was telling you when we first talked, that's when I first met Jojo Walters. We played them, and he almost single-handedly destroyed us and almost sent us home with an L, but only because we had more horsepower in the final analysis that didn't happen. But Jojo and I became and are very, very good friends. But anyway, so thanks to Mr. King, not only did I play against those guys in the summer, because I used to go up to the Friendship House in Orange,
Okay.
project, and I played against Greg Tynes, Dickie Johnson, all them cats. In fact, Jerry Minetti from
Valley, right?
From Valley. Yeah, he's a couple years older than me, but I played against him and all that crew. I would play in Newark. We would ride our bicycles, get on the PATH train, go play at West 4th Street, go to Central Park. So I did have the good fortune of playing against top flight competition during the summer. And like I said, thanks to Mr. King, he added those high schools to our schedule during the formal basketball season. So we were playing, Scott was playing Central. Like I said, Vailsburg, Barringer. Thank God we played Barringer when Edgar Jones missed school that day. I played against him in the park once, and I was like, oh man, that's a whole nother world. But we happened to beat Barringer, and for whatever reason, he didn't play that game. But I ran into him at Memorial Park in South Orange one Saturday. Man, I've never been dunked on before. I got dunked on 10 times in that game. Yeah, he 6'10", 240. Yeah, and can jump out the gym. So yeah, I had the good fortune of playing against the best of the best, either during the summer or during the season. And I think I held my own against the vast majority of them. And as a result, when I got to college, we played. In fact, I played against my freshman year. I had my best game, almost my best game in college, against Kobe Bryant's father. We went to LaSalle.
LaSalle, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Nah, interesting. I mean, obviously, Bucknell, as far as going in, obviously academically, you said you've done well as far as throughout your life, academically as well as athletically here. So just being a Bucknell was that the right fit for you looking back on it?
It was and it wasn't. If I had it to do over again, I would have gone to a Bucknell-like school, but in a more metropolitan area.
Okay.
Bucknell is in central Pennsylvania, beautiful countryside, but it's isolated. If I could do it over again, I would prefer going to a school like, what's the one in Chicago, in Evanston, where Wilbon went.
You're not talking Northwestern or something like that? Okay.
Yeah. Northwestern has the same kind of academic reputation, but it's 20 minutes north of Chicago, and it's in a very peaceful, quiet college town. At Bucknell, I was 3 hours and 15 minutes from East Orange. And it was Philly, I wasn't a Philly guy. We didn't go to Philly on the weekend. So I really are, and most of the guys who were Black guys from Bucknell were from the Metro New York area that I hung out with, at least. So when we left campus on Friday, we were coming back to East Orange and hanging out in New York.
Okay.
So to answer your question, academically, you can't do better. It's real hard to do better, let's put it that way, but it is isolated. And unfortunately, it's still difficult for the majority of Black students to ever feel plugged in at Bucknell. I know some who've had incredibly good academic and social experiences at Bucknell, but they're the exception to the rule. A lot of us, especially those of us who have urban background and didn't go to prep school, for instance, it's sort of like you're always on the outside looking in. Like I said, then you're isolated in central Pennsylvania. And so if you do want to do anything other than what Bucknell affords you the opportunity to do, you literally have to drive, in my judgment, into New York. And that's not easy for everybody.
Interesting. And particularly with your family and obviously their history and to go to obviously predominantly white college here. I mean, and again, just some of the information and things that you was privy to just in your house and within your family, what have you. So that's an interesting dynamic as far as all the knowledge and everything that you do have being thrust into this I'll just say middle of nowhere, going to Bucknell and what have you. You know what I mean? So that had to be an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. It was, and I can, and you remind me of something that I have forgotten for all intents and purposes. My first year, I felt, even though I was reasonably bright, I felt intimidated academically at Bucknell because I had never written a paper. Ever in high school. I had never written a paper. I was on the honor roll. I had great SAT scores, but I had never written. I had written probably a couple book reports, maybe in like junior high school, but I cannot remember ever having an assignment at Scott where I had to write a 10-page paper.
Right.
Well, that's what you do at a Bucknell. And so I felt intimidated by it because I just didn't know how to do it. In fact, I wasn't a very good writer at the time. But if you stick with anything, you'll get better at it. And I did. And then as I got a little bit more mature and more confident, I realized that I could use my urban vibe and insight to my advantage at Bucknell, because I knew who George Clinton was and they didn't. I knew who Monty Irving was and they didn't. And so when they were talking about summering in Switzerland, I could talk about things that they didn't do.
Right.
And when you can go back and forth like that, and then you earn respect because they're like, you mean you played against so-and-so? You rode your bike in New York, in Manhattan? They're like, oh, wow. And so I realized I had quality experiences that they didn't have. And yes, they had quality experience that I didn't have, but it didn't make either of us better than the other. We just had different experiences. So there was later in my collegiate career, and it was primarily both social and academic, when I realized I got nothing to apologize for.
That's right.
I can keep pace when it comes to telling stories and being part of the social scene. It's just that I'm talking about different stuff. I'm talking about sugar sandwiches and water.
Interested. And as far as back then, part of me not knowing is, was Bucknell, was the Patriot League formed back then, or was
no, we played in the ECAC.
The EC, okay.
A lot of the same schools are in it, but no, the Patriot League is a relatively new development. When I'm saying new, 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. And I'm happy to say that the winner of the Patriot League gets an automatic bid, and we have gone, meaning Bucknell, we have gone 2 or 3 times, and in fact, on one. Of course, we'll be we'll play the first seed or the second seed. We actually upset, I think, a Kentucky or somebody one year. We've had very, very good teams since the Patriot League has been in effect. We're kind of average right now, but we've had some very, very good teams, and a number of cats from Bucknell have had high quality careers playing professionally in all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Bucala or Mucala, I don't know if he's still in the league, but he went to Bucknell. He played for Atlanta at least 3 or 4 years. He's, as far as I know, he's the only relatively recent graduate from Bucknell who played in the NBA. And 3 or 4 years in the league is 3 or 4 years in the league. But like I said, there are a bunch of cats who have played in Europe, South America, and done very, very well for themselves, having come out of Bucknell.
Now, while you were playing, did you know what you wanted to do with the rest of your life? Was it play professionally, or just get into the world and just move on?
Well, after Albert King dunked on me effortlessly, I realized that I did not have a bright future in basketball. But yeah, I went to, like every kid, I guess I went thinking I was going to be a professional. I was going to play in the NBA. But like I said, man, it wasn't. I played against Albert English, Albert King, Joe Bryant. There were 10 or 15 guys that I played against. We actually played against Rutgers the year they went to the Final Four, and we were beating them at halftime. I never let Mike Dabney forget that. We were beating them at halftime at our place, and their coach made an adjustment, and they ended up beating us. So I played against some incredibly good cats while in college, and I enjoyed the experience. But what it taught me is, if you're going to do anything in the NBA, it's going to be as an administrator.
Okay.
Because I love history so much, I actually majored in education and history. So by training, I'm a history teacher.
Okay.
But I found my way into the business world through family friends, and had a pretty decent career in human resources, working in the financial services industry for probably 25 years. But and that was by accident. I have to credit the people who heard about me and showed some interest and showed some love. They got me started, and then continued to mentor me while I was early in my career, and helped me grow and evolve as a corporate guy. But that was pure happenstance. I cannot say that I said I was like, I'm going to be a business guy. No, I did not. In fact, I didn't want to be a business guy because I thought that was boring. It turns out that it clearly is not. But you're young and naive. You just don't know.
Interesting. You mentioned obviously being primarily in HR in the corporate world. Like,
right?
How was that? Because you hear HR. Sometimes, people automatically think something negative here, or what have you, which I'm sure is that obviously that's part of the work, but just how was it just being, that person?
That's another good insight.
They come to you, right?
Yeah, I came into the industry when it was they were stopped calling it personnel and started calling it human resources.
Okay.
Personnel is an administrative function, and you dot I's, cross T's, you keep records. You're not looked upon as a real business person. But American industry started to get smart and realize that people really are their most important asset. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to be successful in the insurance game, the technology game, the oil industry, your competitive advantage not only has to be your technology and how you refine oil or whatever, you got to have the smartest, most dedicated, innovative people. And so, like I said, I'm very fortunate that I grew up in the discipline when American business had stopped thinking about personnel as exclusively an administrative function and more of like, I gotta educate people. I have to reward people. I have to find a way to get the smartest, the best, and the brightest. Because the way business works nowadays, if I don't keep Ibn challenged and engaged, you go find another job. You just go tip on your computer, and in 15 minutes, if you're any good, you got people calling you. Hey, I want to do a Zoom interview with you. So, like I said, I'm very, very fortunate that I moved into that discipline as it was becoming much more respected as a true business discipline. And then I was, for most of my career, I was in recruiting.
Okay.
And so I had a fair amount of experience with that. And as I grew professionally, I started recruiting, tellers and worker bees. Like people make, the equivalent of $10, $15 an hour. But if you're any good, you go from recruiting those people to recruiting people with college degrees. And when you're good at that, you get, so at the end of my career, I either ran the recruiting department or I ran the executive recruiting department. Now that was fun because I'm happy to say that the majority of companies that I work for, they placed a somewhat sincere emphasis on diversity. And so I had the chance of trying to find the Ibns of the world who, were senior vice president material.
Okay.
And obviously I get turned on by helping our people succeed, or any deserving person succeed, but obviously our people in particular. And I can remember one episode in Hartford. I was working for a bank, and the investment bank in banking is where the money is. The retail banking, where you and I have a checking account or a credit card, they make pennies on the dollar. That's why they have to have millions and millions of retail customers to make the retail business profitable. But the investment side is where Elon Musk comes and says, I want to build a spaceship. I need $40 billion. And I have a track record of success. You give me 40 billion, I'm gonna give you 45 billion over the course of the next 8 years. That's where the large money is, in the investment side. So there was this cat, the head of the investment bank at this particular company. One of his number 2 people had left. So he needed a new number 2. And so I didn't know him from a can of paint, but I sat and I met with him, and happened to be his name was Sven, and it was this Swedish dude, and very European. And when I walked in the door, 6'5", black, and he was like, I could see him pause. Oh
yeah.
That you have that job? His eyes said it all. And I said, I've been through it before, so I was like, I know who I'm dealing with. So, he described the job to me. He described the kind of person he was looking for, and this, that, and the third. So, I did my thing. I went and found him 3 candidates. 2 were Ivy League cats who had family pedigree, but they were C students and they were average professionally. Like they had worked at senior level jobs in other banks, but they had been there for 18 months, 24 months. I know enough to know if you're in one of those jobs for only 18 or 24 months, it's because you're not making it happen. They don't, there's too much, it costs too much money because they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to relocate these people, buy houses, move them from Seattle to Hartford. You don't keep a person in that job for a year and a half unless they are incompetent. And so, but I was obligated. Those were amongst the best candidates I could find. On the other hand, there was this sister, public high school, went to a public college, got her advanced degree at a public school.
Mm-hmm.
Now, straight A valedictorian at every level in her life, had knocked the ball out of the park professionally for 8-9 years. I mean, she was on her way to stardom. And so I was fortunate enough to find her. I mean, this is in the recruiting game, it's like finding Michael, and nobody else is recruiting him.
Mm-hmm.
So I introduced him to the 2C students and to Sister Girl. And I just knew he was going to say, it's obvious, John, we got to hire Pamela. Don't you know, he said, we got to hire one of the C students. I said, Stan, listen. By then I felt like I had earned his trust, and I had earned the right to be frank.
Yes.
And I told him in quite professional terms, because by now I was really good at assessing people. They teach you how to. I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but I've gone through a lot of training for how do you assess a person professionally to determine how they're going to react through adversity, et cetera, et cetera. So I had all my ducks in a row. And I said, Sven, man, we're making money now. Yes, your boy is going to do fine until it gets hard. When it gets hard, he's going to fold. And he said, and I said, so, and then I pointed to why the sister was right, and adversity had taught her to never give up. And, I said all the right things. He said, John, I appreciate what I appreciate your enthusiasm. Basically, he patted me on my head and said, you just keep making that $130,000 a year, and I'll make the real important decisions. Mm-hmm. He hired number two, he hired the C student. Don't you know, in 8 months, he called me and he said, is Pamela available? I said, why, Sven? He said, you know why. I called Pamela, right? Mm-hmm. She was on Wall Street making twice what we could pay her.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks, right?
Yeah. You had your shot. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I learned that over the course of my career, I learned that I'll say it was roughly akin to if you play ball against a dude who's not confident, I'll destroy him. And these two cats I knew were weak. Mm-hmm. Now, I also put them through the official assessment process, but I was confident in my assessment of them that when the going is good, they'll be fine. As soon as the stuff hits the fan, they're going to show you who they really are. And like I said, by this time in my career, I was confident enough to push back. When dude said, I want to hire the C student, I didn't let him get off easy. Mm-hmm. Because I guess I kind of anticipated his response. So I had really prepared my definition of Pamela, or my defense of Pamela, because I really wanted, that would have been a huge win for the company, for the bank, for her, for me, for her family. Fortunate, it was no question in my mind that she was going to continue to be wildly successful professionally, but we would at least have her for 2 years, 3 years, and she would have made her contribution at our institution, and we would have had a African-American woman in a senior vice president position in investment banking, which was unheard of at the time. Mm-hmm. But I just couldn't get him. I couldn't light his fire about it. And I know I did my part. I advocated as aggressively as I could, but he's the final decision maker.
Nah, interesting you share that story. It just goes to show, all these implicit biases, these microaggressions,
Yes.
that people continue to have here, and in your line of work too. I know there's been, I mean, not even in all lines of work here. There's been studies showing, even you mentioned the young lady's background as far as her education, what have you, but even to go as far as I think about as you were sharing, I just thinking about names here in your position as far as recruiting. I just think about if it was a white individual looking at resume or what have you, you see certain names,
Right.
Unconsciously they're just not even messing around with it. I'll take my name for instance, Ibn. It's not Michael. You know what I mean? And then subconsciously that somehow that resume or that information gets tossed to the side here. Not even. Yeah, so I can only imagine all the hurdles and everything that you had to go through as far as with this gentleman, with your colleague or what have you. And obviously in that case, it came back to him realizing he made the wrong choice.
Right.
And I'm sure there's a lot more of that too that goes on as well.
Absolutely, but they're not going to admit that to me.
Of course not. Of course not.
But you're right. But I have a number of other success stories. Young cat, particularly younger cats who are trying to just get their start in the industry, who I stumbled upon maybe socially, or I stumbled upon however, and a number of young cats and women. I have gotten their foot in the door, and they have taken full advantage of those opportunities and are now leaders themselves and making decisions about bringing the Ibns of the world on board and demonstrating that people with names like Ibn can be just as competent as people with names like Michael.
That's right.
So, that was a frustrating episode, but I'm happy to say that there were a number of others experiences I've had where there were wins and everybody benefited for reasons that you can only imagine.
No, most definitely here. Side note too, as you mentioned, you brought up a couple of times, I actually currently live in Hartford.
Do you really?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow. I'm sure we know people. I have a bunch of friends who are, well, they still have family in Hartford, and they go back. Do you happen to recognize the name? Oh gosh, I played ball with him. He's a big community activist in Hartford. It'll come to me. His son plays professionally in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
But yeah, whereabouts in Hartford?
I'm actually on the north end.
Okay.
I'm on the north end of Hartford. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. Well, you probably know the Mahorns are from Hartford.
They're from Hartford. Yes.
I played with Rick in the summer, and in fact, he just called me out of the blue about 2 weeks ago. Napier. He's my buddy here in Hartford, who's the realtor. His sister was state treasurer for 1.5 million years.
Okay.
Denise Napier. Then I'm real close with the Borges family. They just gave $10 million. They all went to Trinity. They just gave, as a family, they gave 10 million. Peter Borges. There's 3 of them. Peter is my age. He has an older brother and a younger sister. They've obviously all done very well, and they all went to Trinity, but they collectively gave 10 mil.
Wow.
To Trinity.
Interesting. My daughter, she goes to summer camp on Trinity campus too.
Okay, great school. Yeah.
Yes.
Great movie theater. Back when I was there, they used to offer all kind of international movies. I don't know if they still do it, but that was something I used to do all the time.
Yeah. Just thought I'd throw that at you here. I know as far as this in general here, even back with the whole the sports thing here, like, what has it taught you that sticks with you to this day?
Perseverance,
Mm-hmm.
perseverance. Humbleness is a sign of greatness.
Mm.
Um, if you're at it as long as I was, it teaches. I have learned to appreciate, man. Like I said, I've been. Other than if it wasn't for my motorcycle accident, I would still be playing.
Okay.
But I still consider myself a student of the game and passionate about the game. But man, I've been at it since sixth grade,
Yeah.
and I played against some great. I played against Walt Frazier. So when you look back over when I look back over the scope of my career, so to speak, I never would have anticipated, having started with the plastic thing on the telephone pole, that I would have traveled the world, that I would have played against the people that I played against, got to know, all kind of interesting folks, and had the rich experiences that I've had. And then I guess maybe last but not least is, I don't consider myself a natural athlete. I mean, I know guys like Mike Dabney and Edgar Jones, and a whole host of people who were born gifted athletically. Not me. Man, I can't jump over a broomstick. But I played basketball. I played basketball 12, 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I became respectable. I never could jump, but I definitely could hold my own against these guys who could touch the top of the backboard, because I found a way to outthink them. I was always in supreme shape. I could outlast them. So, it teaches you, I guess maybe what I'm really trying to say is, it teaches you creativity. Like there's more than one way to skin a cat.
That's right. And I know, you mind if I put you on the spot a little bit here?
No.
Some random questions, not so random here. So have a little bit of fun here.
Right.
So back in obviously being in Jersey here, did you prefer the Turnpike or the Parkway?
I was on the Parkway more often because I was right off of 147. Clifford Scott is like right
there. Yeah.
Springdale Avenue and 147. I mean, I was on it more often than the Turnpike.
Not sure what the social life was like, but the club or block party?
Man, I was in the Village.
Okay.
I was in the Village. I was at the garage. I was hanging out in the Village, man. In my hanging out day, either there or the Cellar on 95th Street in New York. Okay. I did my hanging out in New York. I didn't do a whole lot of hanging out in New Jersey because to me, it didn't compare to anything that was happening in New York.
Understandable. Being over there by Scott or what have you there, McDonald's on Dodge Street or Jimmy Buff's?
Oh, Jimmy Buff's. No doubt. Jimmy Buff's and then Star Tavern before McDonald's.
Okay. Now, I know you had to pass McDonald's to get to those, so I didn't know.
And I would pass McDonald's in a heartbeat. But when push comes to shove, I definitely had a quarter pounder or two.
Okay. Playground wise, best playground as far as for you
Elmwood Park. Elmwood Park.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Our Rucker. Our East Orange is Rucker Park.
Yes. Clifford Scott or Bucknell?
I enjoyed Scott much more. Bucknell was the catapult that made a lot of things happen. I mean, I got jobs just by they saw like they didn't hire you because they saw Ibn on your resume. They did hire me because they saw Bucknell on my resume.
Okay.
So I got to give them love for that. But Clifford Scott was family. I really felt like family at Clifford Scott.
So I may know the answer to this one, but Coach Kane or Coach Valvalo?
Oh, Kane.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I just got off the phone with him last week. We were on the phone for about 40 minutes. He and I are still father and son.
Yeah. And I know all of yourself and a couple other people have shared a lot of great things about him. Quick question with Coach Valvano. Was he the energetic guy that he was to the day that he passed? Was he still the same guy you had? You had him when he was younger, so I can only imagine how more energetic he probably is.
Yeah. I had him for only 1 year, my freshman year, and then he left to go to Iona.
Okay.
After my freshman year. So I knew him during the recruiting season prior to going to Bucknell, and then I played for him for 1 year. Okay. But to answer your question, I don't remember an X or a O that he ever mentioned. But he was always, he was fiery, charismatic, inspirational, high energy. But I can't remember him designing a play.
Yeah.
No. But he started recruiting inner city talented brothers to Bucknell. So he didn't have to do a whole lot of X's and O's. He was like, man, just go out and do your thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
If anything sticks out here, best game you ever played in your life is the one that sticks out?
Yeah. I got 51 against Kevin McDonald at Elmwood Park. And this is an interesting story. Now, Kevin was getting even more shine. He went to Seton Hall Prep. And if you can get him on your show, get him. Another 6'5" center. He got even more shine than I did in high school. And we're the same year. Now, we never played against each other in high school, but we played against each other at Elmwood Park one night. I got 51, he got 50, and we won by 1. He ended up going to Penn. And back then, you couldn't play as a freshman in the Ivy League.
Yes.
We opened up against Penn in his sophomore year, and I beat him again.
No 51.
No 51. No, I thought something respectable, 13, 14. But but the 51 game, that's by far the most points I ever scored in one game.
Yeah. Now, did you have a go-to move?
Turnaround jump shot.
Turnaround, yeah.
Turnaround jump shot. That was, turnaround jump shot was pretty much, and an occasional jump hook, but turnaround jump shot. I got you. Yeah.
Best team you ever been on?
Probably that summer league team. I had Kenny Young, Davey Evelyn, Reggie Baker. I'm like, I was in heaven because each of them liked to pass first. Okay. And they were all, they're all legendary players in their own right, but they just happen to be pass first guys. So, man, that was probably the best. That was probably the best team because they gave me the ball almost all the time.
Yeah. That helps.
What's the hate about that?
Yes. Now, Spear, I'll use Elmwood as the example. So you go to Elmwood, you got to bring 5 of the best players from your era. Who you bringing?
My boy Eric Williams, who went to Newark Academy. Reggie and Kenny. And JoJo. Oh, I got to get one more, Vinny Harris. So we got 6. Vinny Harris, JoJo, Reggie, Kenny, and my boy Eric.
Who's that's solid. Who's the best high school player in your era? Who would you say?
In my era, Mike Dabney.
Yeah.
Mike Dabney is probably one of the best basketball players I've ever seen. But yes, and he happened to be in my era. Yeah. And his daughter Maya was even better than him.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
How do you define made it, but someone who should have made it? Who should have made it?
there's the brother who I played with, Steve Hayes. He went to Scott, and unfortunately, I mean, and he was, how would I describe his game? I would describe his game as Walt Frazier, cool and understated.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the streets got him.
Yeah.
And then that's the same is true about Kenny Young. A beast, one of the bravest people I ever met, smart beyond, I mean, on the basketball court, smart beyond compare. And unfortunately, you know, the streets claimed him too.
Now, what's the best part about being John Callaway?
Is being a Callaway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just being able to point backwards and say thank you and to be a part of that legacy.
Wow. Yeah. Most definitely here. I know you've had a lot of moments in your life. What's three of your best moments in your life?
Meeting my current lady friend.
Smart answer.
I'm trying, happy wife, happy life, right? But it's actually true. My first trip to Costa Rica, I mean, mind blowing.
Okay.
And if you or anybody listening to this has a chance to go to Costa Rica, do not hesitate. It's a National Geographic blast every second of every day. And then third, my father bought me two double Jimmy Buff sausages one day.
Nah, I hear you. That's all right. A book on your life. What would you call it?
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Easy.
Yeah. And at this stage in your life here, what advice would you give that 17, 18-year-old John Callaway? What advice would you give him?
Be even more serious about academics.
Yeah.
Be even more serious about it. Yeah. I didn't get passionate about reading and really learning until I was an adult. I mean, I did enough. When I was a shorty, and because my parents did the basic things. We had Life magazine, National Geographic, you know, and I was around people who were articulate. So in my own unofficial way, I had a head start on my peers because of that environment. But like I said, in answer to your question, if I had been even more consistent and focused on academics, I would have become more passionate about learning and history and social justice and life in general earlier than it happened.
Understandable here. And interesting you mentioned your parents. My last question is, what would your parents say about you?
Well done. Yep. Yeah, both of them, I know both of them were very proud of me. Well done.
Yeah.
You ain't finished yet, but well done.
Yeah, that's right. Right. Mr. Callaway, I just want to say thank you. I mean, again, the joys of doing this is getting an opportunity to meet individuals such as yourself here and, you know, just get hit with some more jewels that I can continue to just help myself as I navigate through this world here and just have another person that I've met. And like I said, just obviously fond of here, and just you just sharing a little bit of your world here, like how honored I am just to hear this, and I just wanted to say thank you just for squeezing me in and then giving me an opportunity to just hear a little bit of your walk here. And I just wanted to say thank you, and how honored I am to just be here with you.
Ibn, thank you again. And I've watched several of your podcasts, and before I even thought about being a participant, I was proud of you and happy that somebody like you is doing what you're doing, because I've been impressed by both you and your guests, and I hope this continues to grow and evolve. And if you ever need me for anything, you know how to get in touch.
No, absolutely, and I know if I get me a flight to Miami one of these days, you're definitely looking you up.
Please do.
Yes, I appreciate it, Mr. Callaway. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much here.
Okay, Evan. Thank you.
Likewise, and we'll talk.
Okay, I look forward to it.
Likewise. Take care. Man, this is great. Appreciate Mr. Callaway just taking time out just to hear a story. You just never know who's who, and who their family of, and just their journey. And just like I said, just a little bit of his walk here. I appreciate these moments. And again, thank you, Mr. Callaway, for taking time out to spend with me here. But that said, I'm just gonna step away. I put my hand over my heart. That means I feel you. Yeah.